Hey Skydivers, here we are at Skydive City in Zephyr Hills, Florida for what's going to be an absolutely amazing event. This is the 9th annual Hall of Fame celebration event for the International Skydiving Hall of Fame. And why are we here? Because we are inducting 10 amazingly deserving individuals into the International Skydiving Hall of Fame. And what makes this so amazing is not just those 10 individuals that deserve to be recognized as extraordinary among all of us, but there's going to be 400 people here at this event to join them in this process of being brought into the International Skydiving Hall of Fame and being a permanent part of skydiving history. It's going to be phenomenal. So part of what's so amazing about this event is there's people from all over the world who are going to be here. And for everybody that is here joining us this weekend at the celebration event for the International Skydiving Hall of Fame, this is where the process starts. They come over here. Look at all those name tags. Those are only half of the name tags for this event. That shows you how many people are going to be with us this weekend celebrating these amazing individuals.
This portion of the program is brought to you by SunPath Products, the choice of world champions for over 30 years.
We have with us Carol and Lee Schlichtemeyer, and they are the sponsors of this Canopy Piloting Forum. So first we'd like to say thank you very much for making this forum possible. And we'd also like to have you share with us what were your thoughts on why you felt it was important that this information be provided to those attending this weekend.
Well, canopy piloting or swooping is something that, quite frankly, many of the attendees here are older, shall I say, may not be familiar with the competitive forms of canopy piloting. So we thought bringing freestyle canopy piloting here would be a good idea for this meet.
Could you explain to us, Lee, when you say freestyle, what does that mean?
It's basically gymnastics under a canopy. So they're doing things that are not the standard canopy piloting competitive events. They'll be doing things that are a little bit of the show-off in a safe manner.
Carol, have you seen these kinds of activities before?
No, I haven't.
So this will be brand new for you also.
Yes, it will.
Well, we're all looking forward to it, so thank you very much for making this possible.
I feel like a baby in respect to this whole thing, and I've been very fortunate to be involved in a very small wave that's been cresting over the past 15 years and in relation to the whole sport.
I've been competing for about 15 years. I've been skydiving for about 20 years, which is pretty short in comparison to some of you out there. As Ian said, the discipline of canopy piloting is young in comparison to everything else that a lot of you have been a part of, but we've tried to do our best to guide it in the right way and help document some of the things that have gone on with this discipline particularly. We're going to start out with showing a little bit of footage from a recent documentary that was done in relation to the factory team. Now, to talk a little bit about the sport or the discipline of canopy piloting and its birth about 15 to 20 years ago in the early 2000s. It talks a little bit about blade running. It talks about some of the folks who were around in the beginning of the discipline, and also some of the folks that were around and real pioneers in the sport who helped birth this discipline. You'll hear some names in there that never necessarily competed in this discipline, but really helped it come about. Reggie, BJ Worth, was one of the original guys who was involved in some of the blade running stuff that started. So we're going to start out with showing you guys those videos, and then we're going to kind of open up to the floor and maybe do a little bit of Q&A, talk to you guys a little bit more about some of the history of this particular discipline and where we think it may be going in the future, and answer any questions you guys might have. So we'll start off with a little brief intro video here.
My first canopy piloting competition was in 1995. It was before it was called canopy piloting or even swooping. It was fast accuracy competition was the first one that I did. After that I went to a couple of pond swooping events, things like the Pond Swoop Nationals at Blue Sky Ranch in Gardner, New York. I did that a couple of times. I went down to a pond swooping meet in Titusville, Florida. That's where I met Rickster, John LeBlanc, Ziggy Zigmund, a bunch of other local guys from DeLand who are just figuring out swooping. And I thought it's possible that I could do this as a discipline, because at the time it wasn't even formed. It didn't have a structure. There wasn't a given set of rules yet. It wasn't the same every meet. It was different every time you went.
The first blade running events started in kind of the mid-90s, like 95, 96. I got fortunate to get involved in going to those early competitions on behalf of Flight Concepts in 95 and 96 in Squaw Valley, California. BJ Worth kind of conceived of the idea of setting up like giant slalom runs with blades and jumping out of helicopters and flying through like a timed event.
Back then, there wasn't any technology allowing us to have a razor beam across the top of each gate, so there was a lot of judging, it's definitely open to interpretation. The course was aggressive enough that we had to really lay the canopy over on its side, and it's very easy to slip out of the course.
And I saw this advertisement for the 1998 blade running event, and I really wanted to go, man, I wanted to go so bad. And I just wasn't in a place where it was something that I could make happen for myself at the time. I was living off of nothing in a van, making $5 an hour. The very first meet that we went to as a member of the PD Factory team was Red Bull Blade Raid in Utah, flying down the mountains. It was spectacular. Coming through the entry gates on the top of that mountain, 11,000 feet above sea level, flying a 79 or an 84 velocity, you're passing the gates at 80, 90 miles an hour and continuing down the mountainside, whipping hard turns left and right through these big tall entrance gates, these flags, and it was dangerous. It was scary, but it was exciting, and it was the kind of opportunity you don't pass up when you're at that phase in life.
I was a part of the very first Icarus canopy factory pilot team, and that was the first opportunity I had to compete against the Performance Designs factory team.
Well, after a few blade running events, a couple organizers, Jim Slayton and Lyle Pressey, started coordinating swoop competitions on the ground using blades. Reggie Asta from Australia kind of conceived of the whole wind blade concept, and he organized the first several events in California, along with Lyle Pressey on the East Coast, organized an event in Daytona Beach, and they were basically similar, kind of like you setting up a course of blades. You never really knew what the course was going to be until you showed up. That's what was kind of cool about it. It was going to be a carving course or a distance course or flying down, kicking noodles or something. It was the early days were just totally based on piloting ability. Then Red Bull got interested in the event as a kind of a newcomer about the same time as the Pro Swooping Tour was formed by Jim Slayton and Lyle, kind of combining into like a 5 or 6 stop tour around the country. And Red Bull did the same thing the following year.
Jim Slayton and Lyle Pressey put a lot of work into creating a structure for canopy piloting, taking it to the IPC, FAI, and legitimizing canopy piloting as a sport, taking it out of pond swooping, turning it into canopy piloting.
After 9/11, she and Ted Strong organized the next one. She's been very influential in all of the pioneers of sport parachuting reunions. Elizabeth, when did you start jumping?
1960.
1960. So she's a true pioneer and a wonderful lady. Thank you.
USPA Gold Medal awarded for exceptional personal achievement within the sport of skydiving. This man is also the archivist for the International Museum and Hall of Fame. It's Mike Horan.
It is my absolute honor to be here with this panel of gentlemen.
My first parachute jump in 1955 at the Naval Air Station at El Centro, and my first jump was a free fall out of a C-47 using a seat pack of all damn things. But in any event, my first jump was back in '55. Dr. Stapp asked me to study escape from high altitude. And it became very evident real quickly that there was a serious problem. Pilots and astronauts are not skydivers. So we had to look for a system that would protect them even if they were second lieutenants. So we did a whole series of dummy drops up to 110,000 feet with unstabilized. Just go to 110,000 feet, cut the dummy loose, and we had accelerometers, XYZ accelerometers in them, and film to record the rotation. And we had some of these, and the dummies, some of them were dropped in such a manner that we would induce a spin. Some of them we tried to make them as stable as we could. Make a long story short, we had some dummies that spun at the rate of 200 RPM. From 100,000 feet, which would kill a man. So now we started looking for a way how to prevent that from happening. We never considered free falling stabilized because you could never train pilots and air crews to do that. As a matter of fact, if you told them they had to learn, they'd probably quit anyway. So we started looking at different methods of getting stabilization to get down.
This portion of the program is brought to you by Skydive Ferocity, the skydiving jewel in Las Vegas.
All right, skydivers, this is one of my absolute favorite people to have a chance to talk with. Art Thompson is a bona fide, certified, genuine rocket scientist. This guy can do virtually anything in that realm. I've been to his shop near Edwards Air Force Base, and it is amazing the capacity that organization has in both tooling and brilliance. We're talking to Art today because he was a critically important part of the Red Bull Stratus project that allowed Felix Baumgartner to earn an entirely new world record for the highest altitude skydive ever at the time. Breaking a record that had stood for how long?
52 years.
For 52 years that was set by Joe Kittinger. So, Art, how did you get involved in that project? Where did that come from?
Well, I mean, Joe, he's always been the pinnacle of trying to reach for a skydiver. Was like the ultimate. And so Felix had come to me, called me on the phone and said, you know, Art, do you know Joe Kittinger? And I said, yeah. He says, well, you know, if you were going to break Joe Kittinger's record, how would you do it? And I said, well, Felix, it's 3:30 in the morning, so why don't I give you a call in the morning, you go back to bed, and I'll call you and give you an idea. And so I ended up writing a 87-page proposal and flying out to Austria and presenting to Dietrich Mateschitz and the head of Red Bull, proposing, you know, our method of doing it. And part of that was using a you know, pressurized capsule as opposed to Joe, which was in an open basket, using American balloons and American spacesuits. So we had, that was kind of the start of it. It was definitely a challenge. I mean, with some of the issues, you know, in Joe's time, we weren't such a litigious society. And so Joe's program was Air Force project, low budget. They were tasked with how do you put somebody into space and can man survive. Ours being a private program, there's a lot of legal issues. Nick Pantanilla, who tried to break Joe's record back in the 60s, died in the process, and there was a lot of lawsuits. It made everybody afraid of doing anything, you know, unusual. And so I knew that I had to make sure that it was a true flight test program, that we were on top of our game with the way we did all the design engineering, the flight processes. I knew that I was going to have battles with the FAA. I had to work everything out with the Air Force Surgeon General and NASA to get their approvals on it. And so my approach has always been looking at projects, what incentive are they going to have? How do I sell them on why they want to help me? And so that was a big part of it, knowing that NASA and the Air Force, they would benefit from the data on how to reduce or stop flat spin. The design of the flight systems and life support systems was critical because that was something that we could share with them.
Hey skydivers, this is huge. We have the privilege of talking with Alan Eustace, who is one of my heroes for having earned an amazing world record for the highest ever skydive in the history of the world and the universe. It's just amazing stuff. So give us the appropriate descriptor of what it is that the record that you hold, Alan.
So there's three records. One is the highest exit altitude, 135,890 feet. And then they split drogue records, using a drogue and not using a drogue. So I have two other records. One is speed with a drogue, which I think is about 822 miles an hour or something like that. And then also distance fallen, which is whatever, 135,000 minus 10,000. I think the landing altitude is about 5,000. So I have both those records.
Okay, now you got to tell us. I'm sure you've gotten this question many times, but we've got to ask you, and maybe the answer's changed. What inspired you?
You know, I'm an engineer and a skydiver and a pilot, so those are three things that I've always loved. And, you know, I was thinking about what it takes to do one of these high altitude skydives, and almost everybody that had ever done it had done it with a capsule. And I was also a scuba diver, and so I looked at scuba diving. I said, well, isn't that beautiful and elegant? You know, you can swim under the water, you can come back up, you have everything you need. In the previous attempts, there had been a lot of problems, like, you know, Joe being able to get out of his capsule. He had trouble getting out, which would have been a really bad problem. The Russians, somebody jumped out of capsule, two Russians actually. One was fine, the second one broke his faceplate. Ended up dying in the attempt. Nick Pantanilla had a jump where he couldn't disconnect from the capsule. And then even if all of it succeeds, you still only have like 9 minutes of oxygen, or 9 minutes of oxygen from the time you leave till the time you have to get down in breathable atmosphere. And what happens if your reserve comes out, all this kind of stuff. I said, why bother with all that? Let's just do scuba diving. Let's just have 5 hours of oxygen with me, and I don't have to worry about any of this. And the exit's easy because I just release myself, almost like a 3-ring release actually from a balloon. It's lighter weight. I thought it was safer, and so that's what we ended up doing. And for me, it was like, well, I did a paper study of it, and I said, well, I think it'll work. And then there was a moment of truth where you say, am I just going to put it in a drawer and claim victory, or am I going to build it? And you know, I made what was a stupid financial decision to go ahead and build it instead of declaring victory and putting in a thing, but it was worth it. We built a great team.
This portion of the program is brought to you by SunPath Products, the choice of world champions for over 30 years.
Members of the International Skydiving Hall of Fame are individuals. The trustees of the Museum and Hall of Fame came to realize that it was important to be able to recognize non-individuals also for their extraordinary contributions to our sport. That led to what today we call the Path of Excellence Award, and that is available to groups, teams, organizations, and companies that deserve that recognition. This year, the Path of Excellence Award was administered in an entirely new way. First off, anybody in the world can nominate a non-individual to receive the Path of Excellence Award. In addition, those who are critical to the success of the Hall of Fame and the museum were given the opportunity to weigh in on who they felt was most deserving of that award through a balloting process. That process resulted in the selection this year for the Path of Excellence Award of the 1988 Seoul Olympics Exhibition Skydiving Team.
This year, we honor the 1988 Seoul Olympic Skydiving Exhibition Team. Again, can't say that enough. But for those skydivers who might not have been around in 1988, let me summarize the significance of what happened on that September 17th over the capital of South Korea. More than 80 skydivers and support staff put on an aerial show the likes of which had never been seen before. Skydivers from 24 countries entered the airspace over the Olympic Stadium one at a time, and each landed on target in perfect sequence. They were followed by formation skydivers who formed the 5 Olympic rings of 6 skydivers in each ring with perfect timing and symmetry. The world saw, like never before, what skydiving was all about. Our sport was on the map in a big way, as over 1 billion viewers around the world saw this performance, up close and personal, either from the live television broadcast or as spectators in the Olympic Stadium. But nothing tells the story better than pictures and video. So let's step back 3 decades in time and watch the jump as it was captured in 1988.
As the Olympic skydiving team descended into the opening ceremonies, the eyes of the world were upon them. Over 100,000 spectators filled the stadium, and over 1 billion viewers worldwide watched the live telecast. The parachutes thrilled the crowd and changed the image of skydiving forever. Yet this was only the beginning. 12,000 feet above the Olympic Stadium, the Rings freefall team, comprised of national and world champions, waited anxiously for the command to jump. Immediately after exiting the mammoth Chinook helicopter, the formation begins to build. What looks like a simple jump actually took weeks of practice. Each jumper must fine-tune his fall rate to match the others in order to gracefully fly into the formation. 30 skydivers from around the world holding hands in freefall to form the Olympic rings became the most lasting image during the opening ceremonies of the 24th Olympiad. a fragile formation when incomplete, yet strong and beautiful when all the individual nations become as one. Perhaps there has never been a more appropriate or exciting presentation of the Olympic rings. A missed landing would be unthinkable. With a pressure no less than that of an Olympic competitor, these professional skydivers, with a combined total exceeding 120,000 jumps, performed flawlessly. This bold and dramatic performance was indeed a gold medal skydive.
At this time, Laurie Sams will come up and present an award to the museum, and he's given it to Kurt, and Kurt will then turn it over to the museum. The 1988 Seoul Olympic Skydiving Exhibition Team, celebrating the extraordinary achievement of the 1988 Seoul Olympic Skydiving Exhibition Team at the opening ceremony of the Games of the 24th Olympiad in Seoul, South Korea, September 17, 1988. The wildly successful exhibition skydiving performance was seen by over 1 billion viewers and became a positive image for the sport of skydiving all over the world. The commitment to perfection and precision demonstrated by the exhibition skydivers, photographers, pilots, and support staff created a moment in time of enduring value to the sport of skydiving. At this time, I would like to have Jim Captain and Laurie Sams come up and accept this.
Hey skydivers, it's been an amazing day. It's been rainy, it's been damp, but I'll tell you what hasn't been dampened all day long is the enthusiasm, the spirit, and the sense of camaraderie that is so present among all these people who have gathered for this Hall of Fame celebration. We started the day with the canopy piloting formation, which was a huge success because it gave an opportunity for a lot of older skydivers who didn't understand canopy piloting to understand the amazing dynamics of what takes place in the swoop environment. We then went on to have the Pioneers Lunch, which is always a big success because it honors some of the founders of our sport, some of the people who created the sport that we love so much. In the afternoon, we have the Sky High Forum. This is one of the most extraordinary offerings that takes place in this environment. It is Alan Eustace, it is Art Thompson, who ran the Red Bull Stratus project, and Joe Kittinger, who all of these were involved in world records for the highest altitude skydives. The questions and answers went on throughout the afternoon with amazing stories of how these extraordinarily extreme accomplishments were achieved. At the end of the day was the grand finale. It was the presentation of the Path of Excellence Award. And the Path of Excellence Award this year went to the 1988 Seoul Olympics exhibition team for their successful accomplishment of what was one of the most memorable and extraordinary skydives in the history of our sport. And they are well deserving of receiving that award.